Welcome to the Masterbooks podcast, where we bring you conversations that will strengthen your biblical worldview and the faith of your family. I'm Jennifer White, publicist at Masterbooks, a division of New Leaf Publishing Group. As host of this show, I'll be opening the doors to the Masterbooks family library of books, authors, and curriculum. For over 45 years, our company has been about one thing: ink on paper to touch eternity. In a world increasingly at war with God, we are publishing to partner with you to disciple your family, the church, and the nations. Well, hello. Welcome to Masterbooks Podcast, Episode 3. We are so glad you joined us today. And we have with us today two of our moms of Masterbooks, Amy and Carissa. And they are joining me today for a really fun topic. We're going to be talking about homeschooling your kids, discipling them, and using material that helps them grow in their love for God and in their love for learning. So welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So glad to get the chance to work with you. Both of these ladies work for Masterbooks as moderators, and it is a joy to get to work with them and learn about their families and see their families in pictures. You've probably seen their family in pictures in our catalogs as well as our social media, and we love seeing your family's pictures in the same. So today we want to kick off with Carissa. Carissa, tell us a little bit about yourself and your family and why you chose to homeschool.
Yeah, so my husband and I have 6 kids. 5 of them are still at home.
Okay.
Their ages are 9, 8, 6, 4, and a newborn. And for us, homeschooling really wasn't on our radar. I went to public school, so did my husband, and our oldest did. And we never really questioned it or thought anything about it until it wasn't working for our oldest. And around that same time, our daughter, who's 9 now, was ready to go to school. And we started thinking like, well, should we try this crazy homeschool thing? And and it worked for us. It's been great. And along that same time where we were learning about homeschool, I was on my journey to becoming a Christian. And so for me, that really went hand in hand. Like our why is the opportunity to disciple our kids and teach them to hold every thought captive, even math, And so we enjoy the flexibility of homeschool and all of that. But really for us, I feel called to do this. So that's why we're here.
Great. Well, we love that you are homeschooling with Masterbooks, and we love the chance to get to talk to you today about just how this has impacted your family. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Amy, what about you? Tell us about your family, your kiddos, your background while you homeschool.
So I have 4 kiddos, and they are actually really similar in ages to Carissa's 4 younger ones there. Mine are 9 and 7.5. She'll be 8 soon. And then one that just turned 6 and one that is 4. So
Right.
and we have been homeschooling for about 4 years, I guess. Really from birth. But part of why we started to homeschool in the beginning was actually just because I had so many babies. I had 4 and 4.5 years. So I had 2 times where I had 3 in diapers, and we were just in crazy season. And So in the beginning, we were thinking about preschool options for our oldest. And it was like, does it really make sense to do that? I have all these babies, and preschool stuff's so easy. I bet we could just do it at home. So we decided we'll just start out that way. I had worked in Christian schools and even some public school time during studying for my master's degree. So I knew enough. I'm like, I can figure it out. And then maybe we'll send them to school, once they all get a little older. And so we started out that way. And then after the first initial just learning the ABCs and whatever, it was like, okay, now we should start maybe looking into some curriculum just to see if we really want to do this. And I stumbled upon Masterbooks and actually ended up on a phone call with Randy. That's a whole nother crazy story some people have heard before. And after that phone call, I was so just encouraged and uplifted. And I just knew God moved in that situation and was just like, this is it. And so at that moment is really where I felt, like Carissa said, that calling of like, this is what we're going to do. And it was, we're going to do master books, because I just knew there was not going to be any other company that I was going to have that kind of conversation with. And so it was just wonderful. And the encouragement from all the way at the top that comes down to the community of masterbooks is just so special and precious to what we have here. So my background, so I have a master's in education, which it's funny because people always assume, oh, then yeah, you've got homeschooling, but that's actually not. I tell people all the time, it's really not helpful. Because when you study education, you learn like very textbook, this is the way that things are. And that's really part of why we chose to homeschool, because I knew that that's what happens in traditional settings. And my oldest in particular was just not that kid. He was wild and wanted to just run, but he was also very smart. And so I knew if we put him in a traditional setting, he would be naughty. He'd probably get bored because he's just smart as a whip. But so we just really, I've had to learn to kind of set aside the stuff that I've learned from like the educational standpoint and kind of take a different route. It's really in a lot of ways not quite helpful, but we just know we're moms, we know our kids. And I think that really has been one of the underlying things is just, I do this because I know my kids and I know their needs. And from a developmental standpoint, we're going to know that more than anybody else would. So
Sure. Well, that is neat. I bet you did have to unlearn some things from your education in order to homeschool well.
Definitely. Still challenged with that some.
Yeah. I love that Randy shares that often in the homeschool teaching tips about, like you don't have to do school at home. You really can customize your education with your family's needs. And I remember, Carissa, you talking about your story a little bit about Elsie needing a different curriculum or needing some help with a certain subject, and you knew what to do.
Right.
So as we said in the beginning, this episode is going to be mostly about developing in your child a love for God and a love for learning, which I think is amazing that you get to disciple your children at home and you get to teach them about God while they're learning the academics that they need to know. And we want to talk to you today about just your story about how that is working in your home. You've chosen to use masterbooks. We're thrilled, but we're even more thrilled when we get the feedback that these two things together, the awesome the science behind the curriculum, as well as the Bible in the curriculum being woven together to make really happy families and with the homeschool experience. And so I'd love for you, Amy, to start and tell us a little bit about that in your household. Like, how have you seen your children developing a love for God and a love for learning as you've homeschooled them with masterbooks curriculum?
Yeah, part of why we chose to use masterbooks was because we saw that God was integrated and the scripture was integrated into literally every subject. And that was important to me. Even today, I grew up in a Christian school, and back then we used the Christian curriculums in our school. Even today, I know in our local Christian schools, most of them don't. So they're using the same stuff that public school uses for most subjects, and then they have Bible class. And that's just not really the way it should be for us as believers. We believe for our family that, God created everything, including every subject, right? And so we want to teach our kids God in everything. And when we started masterbooks, the very first thing that I did with my older two kids together, we started Foundations Phonics and Math Level 1. And Foundations Phonics, I actually pulled the book here. It is this is lesson 2, week 2, lesson 6. Okay. So right in the second week, it's already talking about S is for sin, right? And then the next one is P. P is for plan. God had a plan to pay the price for our sin. Bam, right there. The gospel message in a few weeks, right? And so my kids were learning that very early on. And both of them, my son first started asking more questions as we were working through this, just this simple, learning the letters and their sounds and this beginning process of learning to read. They're not just learning to read, right? They're learning to develop a relationship with the Lord. And he started asking more questions and ended up accepting Christ when we were probably about a quarter of the way into the book. And then further on, later in the book, then my daughter, same thing, started asking more and more questions and just was developing that understanding more. And then she accepted Christ. So by the time we had finished Foundations Phonics, I had 2 of my kids that were now believers.
Wow.
And, the Lord works when he works in children's hearts. But in this book, the gospel is just so clearly woven into the lessons that it's so perfectly clear for small children, and the Bible talks about childlike faith. And I think, if we're not in these young years instilling that faith into them and instilling the gospel into them, when they have that childlike faith, then they're not going to as easily come around to it as they get older. So it's just such a wonderful, just in using that one book and seeing the way that God worked through it was just amazing. So yeah, we were just so thankful for that. And it's like that in every book that we use is like that. The full integration of scripture is just my favorite part of masterbooks. That every time we open a book to do lessons, there is some type of scripture, character, biblical model that is being taught to my children. And a lot of times to me too, right? So,
right.
Yeah, we were just doing science yesterday. I pulled it out here. We're talking about the water cycle, and this is Adventures in Creation. I'll show you the front of the Adventures in Creation. Talking about the water cycle. So we're talking about rain, and it's pouring rain at our house. And where we live, we are still trying to come out of winter. Okay. And as a mom, and I'm like, okay, can it just be summer already? I want the sun, and then we read this lesson about how we should be thankful for the rain, and God created the rain, and thank you, God, for the rain. And it was like, bam, right to my heart too, as mom of, wow, okay, here I'm being challenged by this science book right now to have this thankfulness for this rain that we have. So yeah, it was so neat that happened even yesterday, because I was like, I have got to share that tomorrow because it's so true. We're always learning, and that's still learning. So
I love that. Well, what about a love for learning? Because I love that is part of the heart behind masterbooks, and the masterbooks method is not just to teach them to memorize, but to teach them to be curious and to have critical thinking skills and to help them just want to learn all the time instead of just be like, okay, here's school and now go play. Just developing that life of learning. So have you seen that in your kids even at this age?
Yes, definitely. I have seen how we can take pretty much anything that we're doing and it becomes a lesson of, Mom, remember we did this in our book, we talked about this and this is how it's playing out now, or we're driving in the car and it's, oh, hey, there's the, and so it's just neat. We definitely, I'm seeing in my kids that even my ones that, like my oldest books are not his favorite. Mm-hmm. And, but Masterbooks has made it so easy for our family he does what he needs to do in the books, right? Yes. And he's but then he has this world outside of him that he's able to take the things that he's learning and experience it more. And that's one of the things that we love so much about Masterbooks is that we're not in books all day long. Right. It's we have our lessons and then we take what we're doing in those lessons and we're applying it to life. And so that's really where that life learning comes into play. as opposed to, even curriculums I grew up on where it was book work all day long, homework at night. And,
Right.
you ask me now what I remember from it, and it's like, some things, so I think it's neat to just really take these things they're learning and like math, for example, where there's so many lessons about cooking. So my oldest, who is my one that isn't my book lover, loves cooking and loves the kitchen and talks about how he wants to do math. Who knows if he will be, but he talks about that. So those opportunities where now we can get in the kitchen and do something, he helps with dinner, we bake something, and now we're applying all these things we've learned in math to just a very practical life thing. I think that's really see that love for learning coming out. Even in a child like that doesn't love the books all the time.
Right.
And then my youngest, he is hilarious. He's my wild child. I thought for sure this kid would never want to do school, literally ever. And we started on Stepping Stones and Math K just after Christmas time, because he's just 4. And I had him out in the fall when everybody kind of started new books and stuff. And I was just, hey, these are your books. I want to play with my cars or whatever. But after Christmas, he started to say, can I look at my book? And, I would just let him look at it. And then he started doing it. And now every day, even on the weekend, he will ask, Mama, can I do my matching books? That's what he calls them, his matching books, because there's lots of matching in those, early on books. And it's just this thing. He already at 4 is just developing this love for wanting to learn new things. And so it's just been really neat. It's very, very cool to see even how different my own kids are in their process through working through these books. But
That's so great. Thank you for sharing that. And Carissa, we want to hear the same about your family, how they are developing a love for God and a love for learning.
Right. Well, and actually our story is really similar to Amy's. Our first master books ever was Foundations Phonics. I got it here. But we were actually coming from a different curriculum, and we were a little backstory, just kind of in a really tough spot. Like I was very overwhelmed and my kids were really burnt out and my daughter was struggling with reading, and I wasn't ready to leave everything else that we were doing, but I was like, okay, we'll just address this one subject. And I kind of stumbled across master books. I hadn't really heard much about it other than, it was Christian. And I was like, okay, we're going to try it. Like, I can't lose anything right now. And so we got Foundations Phonics and started using it. And just for me, the way it was laid out and how easy it was to use was like a huge deal. Like it worked for me better than anything else. But then my daughter was really enjoying it. She would grab her book to start, and that was like at the beginning of the day, and that was not like her. She was the one that would like hide and try to be like not around mom so that she wouldn't get called in to do school. She was very against it. But she was really enjoying the lessons and the narratives in this, like you were talking about, Amy, where it's bringing from creation all the way to the resurrection. And it became kind of like a little morning basket for our whole family. All the kids would gather around to listen.
Well, that's
We're actually using it again. It was great. We're using it again with my younger daughter, and everybody's doing the same thing. Like they all will kind of congregate as they hear the lesson going on and they want to join in the activities. And so for me, that's huge. Anytime I can get all my kids together, even if it's not their subject, just the fact that we're all learning together is a huge part of why I love homeschooling. Excuse me. Sorry. So that was, part of it. But then the focus on biblical truth was really what sold it for me and was a turning point. Up until that point, we had used Christian material, but it was like a Bible verse here or there, or like Christian friendly, like it doesn't go against Christianity, but it's not really for it either, type of scenario. And so to have it be so enmeshed in the whole course where you can't separate it from it was huge. And I remember I was walking down the hall and I heard 2 of my girls talking about how much Jesus must love them. And then Rivers, who was using Foundations at the time, brought up her lesson from Foundations for that day. And that's when it like hit me like, oh my gosh, we're ditching everything else. We are doing this because she's getting it and she's applying it, and it's real to her. And so that really started our whole journey with master books. We've been using it for a few years now, and we use it for every subject. And I love how my kids can really relate to it. academically, but also spiritually. So, the stories and math lessons and language lessons at the beginning, my kids feel like they're friends with, the kids.
Yes.
And they talk about them like they're friends. I have a backyard flock of chickens now because of math lessons. And my daughter really wanted to, be just like Charlie and Charlotte.
Aww.
Yeah. So we've done a lot of hands-on learning because of that stuff that I never was going to have chickens. I was never going to have a vegetable garden. This was not my life path. But, we sort of got swept into it and we love it. And it's been really great for my kids. And I've also seen, a lot of growth spiritually because their understanding of God has grown. And so that has helped their personal relationships with him grow, and then a love for him, because you can't, I think, love somebody that you don't understand and don't know. And so it's really been clear for them, and they've been able to get practical, ways to live out their faith. Like my daughter's really interested in serving others. And that's something that's really blossomed over the last year, especially from the stories and math lessons, and wanting to help others around us and this awareness of things outside of ourselves, so that's been huge. And then I've seen growth in their prayer life. One of my daughters really loves to say grace at dinner, and she'll have a long laundry list of people that she wants to pray for. Aww. And she refers back to her Where Faith Grows lessons with it. And it's really sweet to see them acting this out and taking action in their faith.
Oh, I love it. What a great testimony both of you have. Salvations and like real life practical living out the gospel in their own little lives. That's beautiful. And I love that you have chickens in a garden now because of math curriculum.
Yes. Angela Odell.
We might need that disclaimer on our website. You may have your chickens.
Be warned, your child may like chickens. I love it. Well, one of the segments that I love to do in our podcast is called Off the Shelf and Into Your Heart. And that is where we ask you about one of the books from our library. And it can be curriculum, or it could be one of the parenting books, or it could be one of our Christian apologetic titles, something that really has impacted your own heart or the heart of your family because you have read it and implemented it in your household. So Carissa, we'll start with you. I'd love to hear what that book would be for you.
Okay, mine is actually a set.
Okay.
The World Religions and Cult set, the 3 volumes.
Yes.
Now, this is actually part of the comparative religions course, and I did that myself. That was one of the first ones that I like to do the high school courses myself.
I love it.
Yeah, we can learn too, us moms. We can get in on it. For me, this was one of the first resources that I used that wasn't curriculum for my young children.
Right.
And I don't come from a Christian background. I was raised LDS, and so this particular set was really important to me. I have a desire that my kids will really understand what my faith is and how it differs from others, including, family members of ours. And so going through this course was so much fun for me. It really helped me to be able to defend my faith and understand it even better, and to be able to proclaim the gospel to people who believe differently than me. And so I can't wait to go through it with my kids when they're older. Actually, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing it. And we will put the title and the link to that particular curriculum in the show notes for you, and everything else that's been mentioned today. Okay, what about you, Amy? Off the Shelf and Into Your Heart. What's your book?
Yes. So one for my kids would just be math in general. So, okay. And then I'm going to talk about one for me. But my kids just love math. So far, all of them are math lovers, which is awesome. And the masterbooks math is just, I can't say enough good things about it. Truly, they love it. Everybody always wants to do it. Even my ones that aren't book lovers just love it. It's the first thing they ask for. They love math.
Good.
We're flying through math books. They just so enjoy it. And we're so grateful for that, because I feel like that's one of those like scary subjects, right? That parents are always nervous to teach, and they just love it. But for me, I pulled this one out too. My that I've done so far is Raising Them Up. And Masterbooks just has such good parenting resources. They're all great. It's honestly hard to pick one. But this book in particular is one of the more recent ones I've read. And it talks about in here how parenting, the journey of parenting, is not a sprint, but it's a marathon.
Mhm.
And
That's
I
good.
think that's just such an important thing for us to remember, especially as homeschooling families, that, you know, there's times where you want to throw in the towel and maybe where you want to run away. And so it's just really great to have that reminder that this is a marathon and we're going to push through, and that God's got our back. And it's so challenging for us as parents. And another thing I really love in here is Israel Wayne talks about how our, let me see, I got to look at my note because it's so good. So the process of parenting is just as much about our personal spiritual growth and maturity as it is about our children's. And I think that is another thing that's just so important for us to remember, that this process of parenting and homeschooling our kids is really just as much for us and what we need to learn through it
Sure.
than what we're doing for our kids. And we just have such a unique and a blessed opportunity in getting to keep our kids home with us on how our growth happens through that. So yeah, just wonderful resource. I really love them all, but just really good nuggets of truth in there that are good daily reminders for us as we're in the trenches. So
Right. All
yeah.
day. Whereas a
Uh-huh.
public school child or a child that goes to another school, they're not in the house all day, but you're like literally with them
Yeah.
mostly all day.
24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a different dynamic that you've got to have more parenting. What's the word? Prowess. More,
Yeah.
you know, have
Yeah.
your
Yeah, more
parenting
tools in our
engine
tool
on at
belt.
all times.
Yes. All the things. Yep.
Right. Well, thanks for sharing that. And we will put more information about all these books in the notes for you. Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about, just really quick, is we all work under Randy Pratt, he used to be the vice president, now the president of Masterbooks, and he does a teaching tip, homeschool teaching tips on Thursday at 3 p.m. Central in the Masterbooks app. And we invite you to join us there, where he gives great biblical and practical wisdom on how to homeschool through hard seasons, how to homeschool when your child is having challenges, just every avenue. He's a homeschool dad of 9. He's graduated 5 and is about to graduate. He and his wife, Kristen, are about to graduate their 6th. And I know that you guys, you girls, have listened to a lot of his homeschool teaching tips, and I'd love to hear just like maybe a little tidbit that you have picked up from what he's shared and carried with you, implemented into your own homeschool. So, Krista, we'll start with you.
Okay, I have a couple just real quick, but the first I was introduced to, he says it all the time, growth hacking, and
Oh,
I had never
yes.
heard that before. But the premise that you can try new things and it's okay if they don't work, and you can pivot, and
Mhm.
you don't have to stay like entrenched in something that's not working, which was sort of
Mhm.
my personality. Like if I've made a decision, I feel like I have to stay doing that, even if it's like exploding in front of me. So I love
Yes.
that freedom to like, oh, I don't have to keep doing it this way. I can look at it from another angle. And then, as far as practical advice, he gave a really timely tip on automation right as we were preparing to welcome our new baby. And I think it really was the key that helped us navigate this season without just like giving up on school and saying, you know what, we're not doing anything. So, a couple of tips that he gave were setting an alarm to signal the start of school. And we do that now. And so I'm not the bad guy saying, hey, you got to get your books. You know, they just know what to do. And then setting expectations on what they can do when I'm busy with the baby or called away, like what can we do independently, or what can be done independently. And so it's really helped them take ownership over their learning, which has helped our whole day run smoother. So it's great. I
Good.
love tuning into the lives and chatting with all the moms. It's fun.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those. Those are great tips. I'm not a parent, and those are great tips for me as well. Okay, Amy, what about you?
So early on in our journey, we and really it feels like several times a year we go through this, like trying to find our current groove, because things are always changing a little bit.
Right.
And one thing that's really been a huge nugget for me is when Randy did a teaching tip about how curriculum is just a tool in our toolbox. And like I said before, with my education training, that's not exactly what you're taught. Part of my specialization is like curriculum development and like the importance of curriculum. And so, coming out of that and realizing, you know what, we don't have to just do this book like every little detail exactly how it's supposed to be all the time every day. Like, it's okay to, like Carissa was saying, have a little bit of that flexibility and give yourself some grace. Randy talks about that a ton, and I think that's so important for us as moms, just in general, homeschooling or not, especially in our culture, to give ourselves grace. And being able to just remember that our curriculum is a tool. And if we have days where it just didn't get done at all, or maybe it looked a little different than I wanted it to, or whatever, that's okay. And again, we talked about earlier, with masterbooks being so heavily focused on whole child development and the growth of a love for learning.
Yes.
And those are the things that are so much more important on whether or not we checked all the boxes off. And I'm a very type A, check the boxes off type person. And then I had 4 kids in 4.5 years and was like, yeah, forget the boxes. so that definitely rocks your world when, I'm very structured. And so there's not as much structure in our life anymore. And that's totally great. It's fine. And it's worked very well, to have a little different than what I would probably prefer in my selfishness. But yeah, I love that we can get everything we need from the textbooks, and they're to the point and very practical. And then we can have time to adventure, and we're not married to our desks all day, every day.
Great. Yeah.
And it's just, there's so many. I really enjoy actually going back and listening to older teaching tips too. I will go to the YouTube channel and listen to old ones if I'm putting laundry away or while I'm making dinner. I'll turn those on sometimes because, there's ones even before I was ever homeschooling that were created. And so it's such a good resource to just be able to go and listen, or if we're in a new subject, to go find some of the old videos that are on that particular subject and just learn from the authors or from Randy. And so, it's been great. We really, really appreciate that encouragement. And again, that's one of those things we really wouldn't have that anywhere else. So we're just so thankful that Masterbooks takes the time and energy to do those things for the community. It's very, very helpful.
Right. I feel like Randy has led the company very well in helping the homeschool families win. And so he's doing that with the curriculum, doing that with the teaching tips, doing that with the social media, like with the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group. That's a place where you can go find out what you need to know about the curriculum. And the same with the app, the Masterbooks app, which you can download from Google Play or iTunes and join the community and be encouraged. We have a chapel, we have a book club, we have all sorts of opportunities on the app for you to get the information you need and build that community of Christian moms. And I love that the teaching tips that both of you shared, Carissa, yours was about like having more structure during difficult seasons, like automating. And that really plays into the quote that you brought up, Amy, from Israel's book, Raising Them Up, of like, this is a marathon. And so what I take away, because I deal with perfectionism and trying to overcome it, as a lot of what Randy teaches is how to not get burned out by the perfectionistic ideas that you have about school and family and your role as a mom. And then Amy, yours just, realizing, hey, I'm not going to check off all the boxes every day, and in order to win and still be a great mom and love being a mom and a homeschool mom, you've got to just be flexible. And I love that you're also both teaching your kids these great life skills of how, the order and how to self-direct and, be doing what you need to be doing, and then giving yourself grace and having, this family atmosphere where we don't have to be perfect to have a great life. I love it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both for being on the show today. We loved getting to hear about your homeschool experiences and your families and your backgrounds and why you use masterbooks. We're thrilled that you're part of the team. And we want to thank you, the listener, for downloading this podcast or watching it online. We are here to open wide the doors to the Masterbooks family catalog, bookcase, the curriculum, the books, the authors, everything that you might want to know about using master books to help you win at homeschool and help you impact the eternity of your children as well as those around you, the community, and even the nations, wherever your influence goes. And so in Jesus' name, we bless you with an abundance from heaven to overflow into your family, your immediate family, and beyond. And we can't wait to see you at the next podcast. Hey, thanks for joining the Masterbooks podcast. This was fun, and we are really glad you were with us. We invite you to check out masterbooks.com. We have a big library of books that will feed the faith of your family. And hey, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss an episode. We'll see you next time.